President Obama is taking new steps to reform the country's prison system. He announced a ban on solitary confinement for juveniles in federal prison.
The president says the practice is used too often and can cause serious psychological damage. CBS News Justice reporter Paula Reid joins us now from Washington. Paula, great to see you. What are the highlights of the president's ban?
Here, the president wants the federal prison system to reform its use of solitary confinement. He's calling for a ban on the use of the practice for juveniles. And then he also wants them to severely limit how they apply this to low-level adult offenders. Of course, the majority of prisoners in this country are housed in state facilities, so this also serves as a message to states across the country on how they can reform their use of solitary confinement. And we've already seen about a dozen states reform their practice of solitary confinement just in the past year or so. So again, this is a message in his last year in office to states across the country, to the federal prison system, telling them we can't use solitary confinement the way we have. It's not effective, and it's dangerous psychologically.
Paula, why is he announcing these reforms right now?
It is interesting because, this is his last year in office, and while his administration has pushed for a lot of criminal justice reforms, it was traditionally his former Attorney General Eric Holder who was the face of pushing for all those reforms. Holder was the one in front of the Sentencing Commission. Holder was the one coming out against mandatory minimums. Holder was the one opening investigations into prisons and police. So here in his last year in office, it seems that the president wants to be the face of a lot of these criminal justice reforms that his administration has been pushing for years.
Paula, why does this ban only apply to juvenile prisoners?
Well, the reforms apply to all the federal prison inmates, but juveniles are sort of the headline here because there's an outright ban on the use of the practice as it pertains to juveniles. But it also applies to low-level adult offenders, and there are 50 guiding principles that the White House has put out here in talking about all the different ways that this can be used. So it's not just juveniles who will benefit from these reforms.
Paula, what are the financial implications here? Has President Obama set a budget for his reforms?
The expectation is if you limit the use of solitary confinement, which is extremely expensive, that you should see savings. And in the states that have reformed their use of solitary confinement, that has been the case. They've seen their budgets actually decrease. And that happens for two reasons. One, because the practice of solitary confinement, where you essentially isolate a prisoner from any human contact outside a few prison officials, that is very expensive. But also the argument is that people who are put in solitary confinement, particularly towards the end of their prison term, that they have a harder time with reentry into society and are more likely to have to go back to prison. They have higher rates of recidivism. So the hope is in both of those points that they will see a savings in prison budgets, which, as we know, are pretty out of control.
All right, Paula Reid for us in Washington. Thank you.